call the meeting to order and stand and pledge allegiance to the flag, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My normal first statement, any of those that have a cell phone, please either turn them off or mute them. Thank you, I appreciate it. The first item is approval of treasurer warrants. We have the payroll warrant for May 4th and May 11th.
I move that we accept the payroll warrants for the 4th of May and the 11th of May, 2018.
All those in favor? 5-0, thank you. Accounts payable warrants, May 8th and May 15th.
I move that we accept the accounts payable warrants for May 8th and May 15th, 2018.
And I'll second it. All those in favor? 5-0, thank you. Approval of the minutes for May 1st. Do we have any corrections? Is there any omissions? I couldn't find anything. If so, can I have a motion to approve?
Move the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Tonight we have a special presentation of the dedication of the town report. And I'm going to turn it over to Bob Blackman.
Thank you. Ray Soul, could you step up here, please? I didn't have time to memorize this, so I'm going to read it.
Bob, we're going to keep you company.
If you don't mind.
Okay. Thank you.
The town of Wiscasset is pleased to dedicate the 2017 annual report to Raymond Ray Soul in recognition of his many years of community service. Ray graduated from Morse High School in Bath in 1959. After graduation, he owned and operated an auto repair shop in Woolwich until he was offered a job as the transportation supervisor for the Wiscasset School Department, a position he held for 17 years. As transportation director, Ray's duties included all the mechanical maintenance on the buses. Ray and his wife Suzanne have lived in Wiscasset for 47 years, where Ray has served as a member of the planning board for the past 23 years, serving as chairman for the last several years. He has also served on the budget committee and is currently serving on the airport committee. He possesses a pilot license with instrument rating and owns a single-engine aircraft which he stores at the Wiscasset Municipal Airport. Over the years, Ray has flown his bride to the Bahamas and have made several trips to Georgia to visit friends. After retiring from the Wiscasset School Department in 1988, Ray became self-employed as an excavation contractor and is still currently working in the business. In his younger years, Ray used his experience as a mechanic to pursue an interest in stock car racing. His wife said she couldn't remember whether he actually won any races, but said Ray still enjoys attending races at Wiscasset Raceway. Suzanne says at age 76, Ray is trying to retire. However, she says he has a hard time saying no to his lifelong connections. Whether it be mechanics, excavating, or planning board issues, he is always willing to share his expertise with others. Since the Cubbyhole Pub opened next door to their home, Suzanne says Ray can occasionally be found there washing dishes. No matter what job he takes on, he takes it very seriously, says Suzanne. He is very conscientious. The town of Wiscasset is appreciative of his dedicated contribution to the town and wishes him well in future endeavors.
Thank you. Okay, we have no committee appointments. Our next one is a public hearing on the annual town meeting warrant articles. Can I have a motion to, for a public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Okay. Yes, Jeff, I see you've got something in your eyes.
No,
Okay. Usually you go to just approve it.
no, I'm sitting back.
Okay. I'm sure all of you have a copy of the warrant. We have already to start with Article 3, which is to the school budget, to approve the school budget. That's either yes or no. Article 4 is the revenues, estimated revenues in the town, again, yes or no. Article 5, shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $197 and $868 for town office administration. Selectmen, 4 favor, 1 opposed. Budget committee, 7 favor, 0 opposed. Any questions? Yes.
Do we need to go through each article, Madam Chair?
I'm wondering if somebody might have a question or a comment. I may not, maybe not as extensive,
Okay.
if you don't want.
No, that's
But I'm thinking if somebody has a comment, it would be nice to be able to let them. Article 6 is to raise and appropriate $847,447 for the airport. I'll look around, and if you have anything to say, just raise your hand. Article 7 is the town animal patrol, $11,487. Article 8, Office of Assessment, $6,654. Municipal boards and committees, $2,843. Celebrations, $12,000. Article 11 is to appropriate $97,923 from the Perpetual Care Trust Fund for the cemeteries. Article 12, $82,215 for the town clerk, excise collector, and register. Article 13, $49,507 for code enforcement. Article 14, $20,000 for contingency. Article 15, $160,300 for contractual services. Article 16, $18,046 Office of Elections. Article 17, Emergency Medical Services, $553,227. I'm sorry, $553,227. Article 18, Office of Finance Tax Collector, $218,590. Article 19, the Fire Department, $148,242. Article 20, General Assistance, $25,071. Article 21, Municipal Building Maintenance and Operations, $72,342. Article 22, Municipal Insurance. Municipal property is $33,229. Unemployment is $13,100. Retiree health insurance, $44,613. Parks and Recreation, Article 23.
Yeah, I have a question on that.
On the Parks and Recreation?
The presentation of the article itself.
Okay.
There are at least 7 other articles where we anticipate the revenues and say we'll partially offset the above appropriation. But we didn't write this one up that way. We took all that information and massaged it into the article itself. Why wouldn't we treat them all the same?
You can if you want to. If you remember, at the meeting, we had some Old Town reports, and this was language that was used in an Old Town report. And there had been some discussion on the presentation, so I certainly can reword it, but this was what was on the draft at your meeting.
Well, this is the kind of thing that goes by you with meetings like that.
Sure.
Like I said, we have 7 done one way, and then the next one is just done a totally different way.
Would you like it changed?
Well, it's a little late now. I mean, it's been posted.
No, because you don't post it till after the public hearing.
Well, the ballots have been printed and sent out.
It is on the ballot
Yep.
that way.
I would just suggest in another year that we are consistent
Yes,
with our article.
okay. All right,
Thank you.
certainly. Again, Article 23, Parks and Recreation, appropriate $815,669. $450,000 is to come from revenue. Article 24, Police Department, $423,858. Police Department School Resource Officer, $40,341. Article 26, Public Utilities, $277,475. Article 27, Public Works Department, $665,546. Article 28, Office of Selectmen, $27,247. Article 29, Senior Center, $11,482. Article 30, the Shellfish Conservation, $6,075. Article 31, the Transfer Station, $590,697. Article 32, it says to appropriate the sum of $546,289, the entire amount to come from department rental revenues and surplus for the total enterprise funding wastewater treatment plant.
Yes, question.
Yes, sir.
The part in parentheses, the entire amount to come from departmental revenues and surplus. Isn't that somewhat a contradiction in terms? The whole idea is all the monies come from the revenues of the department. Not at the end of the year, we have an overdraft, we take out a surplus. And I know this has been put that way for a number of years, but I think it goes against what we're trying to accomplish.
But this specifically references any surplus in the wastewater, not, you're thinking of the town's surplus. This is specific to the enterprise, the wastewater enterprise surplus fund. That is specific to their, you know how you do the carry forwards in June? That's what it's specific to, Ben. And maybe we could wordsmith it a little bit, but it doesn't mean that it's gonna come from,
And I would suggest we do forwards
okay,
a little bit.
sure.
Because that's how I interpret it. Most people see surplus, they
Yeah,
think surplus. Okay.
they're gonna get that amount of the money that and plus the surplus from the year before. That's what you're thinking people are gonna think, correct?
I'm thinking that at the end of the year, if they had an overdraft, they take it out of general fund.
Couldn't it just say department surplus?
It could say whatever you want to say. You weren't on the board, Bob, but when we got the USDA loan, there was specific language that the town had to adopt to create the enterprise fund, and that's where this language comes from. But the board can certainly change it if you want to.
Well, it seems like just adding that one word would fix it.
Sure.
Okay. That's something we can do next year. Article 33, Waterfront and Harbors, $44,777. Community organizations, Article 34, Wiscasset Public Library, $57,250. Yes, Judy?
Do you want me to?
Yes, please.
I'm a member of the Budget Committee, and we did vote 7-0, which included my vote to support the library with this amount. But I want to be transparent. My personal vote will be no on this article.
Is it fair to ask why?
It was a difficult decision for me. I've always supported the library, and I will continue in a different way. But sometimes, as I've done with education and the school department, I have voted against, on very few times, against the school budget, when I feel that there is nothing else I can do that could change a situation or the process. So, the trustees know it's not up to me to share beyond, but I did feel I needed and wanted to share that I would not support it this year.
Thank you. Article 35, Healthy Kids, $1,500. Article 36, New Hope for Women, $1,515. Article 37, Help Yourself Food Pantry and the Church of the Nazarene Outreach Food Pantry, $2,000. Municipal capital improvement questions. Pool chemical system for the Wiscasset Community Center, $10,000. $42,000 for a pickup truck with plow for the Parks and Recreation Department to replace the 2008 pickup truck. Article 40, $175,000 to purchase a new plow truck for the Public Works Department. This will replace a 1995 truck. Article 41, $9,000 for video recording equipment, officers and vehicles, and update firearms for the Wiscasset Police Department. Article 42, $395,000 for public works paving projects. Article 43, shall the town vote to appropriate the balance of the $1 million capital improvement withdrawal taken from the capital reserve account to reduce the tax commitment, estimated to be $201,846. Any questions on that one? Okay. Article 44, tax anticipation note interest, $15,000. Article 45, $40,463. It's the 7th annual payment of a 10-year general obligation bond for the municipal pier debt. Article 43 is $30,000. This is the lease purchase of the backhoe for the Public Works Department. Article 47, $228,234. It is the tax general obligation bond that we took out for the school of $2 million. That's our yearly payment. Article 48 is to set the tax dates when taxes are due, October 26, 2018, and Friday, April 26, 2019. The rest of the articles are basically housekeeping articles that are on the warrant every year. Yes, Ben?
I may know the answer, but I'm going to ask. The interest rate we charge went from 7 to 8%. Does that come from the treasurer of the state?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other questions on the warrant? Yes? Yes, please.
Hi, Pamela. Is there anything in there that states that if a budget is not voted for, that a department will be eliminated, such as the planning department was voted down last year, and people not knowing that if you vote that budget down, that department will be eliminated?
There's nothing in here, but that's just a given. I mean, if the townspeople vote down a department and we have not money, then it is gone, unless the Board of Selectmen choose to take it back to the people, and that would be at the board discretion.
It's just not something that's made clear. You may think that it's a given, but for the average Joe voting, I'm not gonna vote for the police department budget because it seems like it's really, really high. And you don't know that if everybody votes it down, that's it, no more police department.
Well, I think part of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, you've mentioned this, and Ben has mentioned it, I think we all have mentioned it at one time or another. The voters get very discouraged when they vote no on something, and all of a sudden, a week later, it's back on the ballot again, and they're voting again. And so again, that would be at the discretion of the Board of Selectmen if they chose. Or if there was like last year with the planning, if a petition came out, we would take it back to the people. But that's standard operating procedure. If we do not have the money as of June 30th, there's no longer a department.
Okay, if maybe in the next one you could explain that in the text somewhere, because I've been voting for 30 years and I didn't know that that would happen.
Okay, we'll take it under consideration. Thank you, Pam. Anyone else have any comments? Okay, can I have a motion to come out of public hearing if we have no more questions or comments?
So,
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, now is the public comment section. At each regular selectman meeting, there will be time devoted to any resident or taxpayer of the town of Wiscasset to address the selectman regarding any item that is not on the agenda for that meeting. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. There will be a 30-minute maximum. Are there any public comments?
I do have a question. I love Wiscasset. I am unclear as to, and I tried to bring this up with Public Works, I haven't got a response between emails, and how the street cleaning is done, because the one side of my street is cleaned and mine is not. And it is, other streets have been done, and I watched them go by and didn't come back. Just wondering if there's a schedule that would be available, or something that we can say, hey, you know, is that possible?
All the road commissioners in the audience, do you have an answer for that, Doug?
Well, I can't.
Sorry.
I recall your email, I apologize for not responding. We do go about the whole town, and I'm not sure if your side of the street was done or not. But all I said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have public comment? Okay, if not, we'll keep, I'm sorry, please.
Hi, Ann Scanlon. I just have a little statement. I wanted to bring up my concerns of how the members of the PAC committee were selected. It appears to be a very slanted committee, and I wish that someone from the business community who represented 80% of the businesses who are not for the MDOT project had been picked to be on it. I do know people from the business community wanted to be on it and they weren't selected. I don't think it's right that they were ignored, as no one is on it to make our concerns known going forward. Additionally, I wish there would be a special meeting just to address the parking, an open meeting. We need to make the most of what we have left, which isn't much. One concern is taking away the first 8 spots on Water Street. I've heard that's a tough turn for the fire trucks since the street's being changed. And there is another entrance to Water Street. Middle Street is a much easier turn, and it's quick to get from Middle to Water. These are not long streets. So I think it's only right to have a more of an open discussion, because a lot of livelihoods are being adversely affected from decisions that are being made to do with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Susie offered to take me out to
Then-
dinner.
Then I think you better take her up on that offer. Thank you very much. Great. Any other public comment?
Judy?
Yes.
I'd just like to respond to that comment. The last PAC meeting was the first meeting that I had been to, and I got to say I was really struck by what I considered rudeness at that meeting. And my philosophy, which I'm not trying to imprint on anybody else, is that when a public committee like this PAC committee, which is representing the town, has guests like the folks from the DOT or the folks that are sitting in the audience who are interested citizens who come, that they should be treated with respect. If you don't want to listen to what they're saying, just don't come. It would be so simple to fix that problem. But after listening to that, I thought, I'm not ready to give up any of the parking on these side streets. That parking belongs to the town of Wiscasset. And we don't have the same proposal in front of us that we might have had a year ago. So I think it's important to look at the current proposal before any decisions are made about parking. And I don't think it's up to the DOT to say, well, this parking place will be gone, and this parking place will be gone, and this one will be gone. Because they're not the parking places. They belong to the town. And fire trucks have been turning onto those streets for longer than we've been here.
But isn't that what the Public Safety Committee is supposed to be dealing with, Chief? Is that?
No, just the parking subcommittee
Okay.
from the PAC are looking at those concerns. Yes, the fire trucks are going down those roads and have been, but they're a lot larger now, and so is the ambulance. There is illegal parking that has been authorized by this group, not you, but the select board in the past, that is illegal. You cannot have parking spaces that close to a crosswalk. So things of that nature are all being looked at as a whole.
And is that going to be brought to the
Those
select?
Well, eventually. We only make recommendations to the PAC. The PAC will make their recommendations to you. I don't report, the subcommittee doesn't report to you, we only report to the PAC. They will take that information and present it to you.
Okay, and you have not presented that to the PAC as of this time, right?
That is correct.
Do you anticipate when you will?
The next meeting?
At the next PAC meeting?
Correct.
And then they will present it to the Board of Selectmen?
I don't know what their schedule is to go
Okay.
to you.
All right. So the final decision, I'm assuming, would be the Selectmen at that point?
Correct.
Okay.
But there is a lot of illegal parking that is happening right currently.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Ron?
I'm set, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, let us go on to department head or committee chair. Town treasurer Bernice Boyce, request for administration office closed, was it June 30th? 29th, 2018, for year-end closing.
We typically, in the past, have closed for a half day, and I'm sure that most of you have seen in the warrant. We've had to do a software upgrade, and there's some changes that have to be made that'll take more than the half day. So we'd like to, with the board's permission, just the administrative offices be closed, where you excise your cars and like that for that day, so they can do the conversion. And I wanted to get it out early enough so I could put a notice in the newspaper and like that, if the board would agree with that.
And that's a Friday?
It is. It's the last day of the fiscal year.
What's the board's thoughts?
We did it last year.
Yeah, okay. Do you just need a consensus, or do you need a
No,
motion?
I'll make a motion.
You want a motion? Okay, I'll move that we close the town office June 29, 2018 for year-end closing.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you. Wiscasset Transfer Station proposed new rate for zero sort recycling.
You have in your packets a notice that we received from Pine Tree Waste. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because it's quite a price increase. I know a lot of you have probably been following it in the press of how the bottom has fallen out of the price of recycling. We currently pay $5 a ton. And as you can see, their examples are that it can be anywhere from $56.98 all the way to $103.63. That's quite a jump from $5 a ton. There's no action that you need to take. I just wanted to bring this to your attention because we often talk about the budgets and how do we end up with not enough money. We just, as you can tell, we received this May 4th. So this is just an awareness item. Hopefully things will turn around and we might see prices change, but this is the notice that we have before us right now.
Bob?
I was just looking at the bills and I didn't notice, but what are we paying per ton to get rid of garbage?
I'd have to check on, it changes,
72.
Was it
72?
72? Okay, I was gonna say 70, but 72. Thank you.
I don't think I'd want to pay more than that to get rid of something else.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go on to Wiscasset Fire Department structural inspection. Wiscasset Live Fire Training Facility.
So you probably have seen in the paper, there's been a lot of conversation about the fire training facility that's located in Wiscasset. In fact, the newspapers have reported the Jefferson Fire Chief at the Damascotta Board of Selectmen's meeting saying that our building was unsafe, and they're trying to justify a new building. I'm not suggesting they don't need it, I have no opinion on that, but I wanted to bring out in public to the board that the town did have an engineer go and look at this building, and if you look on page 2, you see the recommendations that they made for repairs. It says posts must be installed under the north and south ends of the steel beam. The steel beam supporting the second floor slab should be cleaned and painted, and the crack in the block should be repaired. All of that work has been done. So I just wanted to bring this out to you. Obviously, the building is old, you can tell by the pictures, and it's not going to last forever, but I thought that it was important to bring out publicly that the building has not been condemned and it is not unsafe.
Thank you. The department head monthly reports. Anybody have any questions or thoughts?
I don't. As you can see from all of the department reports, folks have been busy. It's spring and there's a lot of activity going on. I think one fun, important thing that I'd like to share, and I thought I saw Lisa here somewhere. But Lisa, do you want to take a minute and talk about the membership sale?
Sure.
That's going on? Not to put you on the spot, but I just think it's important to share.
We are having a membership sale for 3-month prepaid memberships. It started today, and we are going back to 1998 pricing as a celebration of our 20th year still. So you can get up to a 25% reduction in a 3-month prepaid membership. That sale price goes on through June 30th, coincidentally the last day of the fiscal year. So it started today, and we have been selling quite a few memberships today. Our membership sales are up just today already, so hoping to get that big boost at the end of the fiscal year for this. We're also doing a Facebook contest. If you like and share our post on this, we will be taking one random person from that list of people and giving away one 3-month membership. And that is getting a lot of attention. So that's, yeah. So that's what we're doing for the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, unfinished business. Audit update.
Got a lot of hands, just bear with me.
Bristol School Department.
It's for discussion.
Do the extras?
Of these guys.
Those for you, sir.
All right, thank you.
They're for comparison, for discussion.
So, I gave you 3 things. 2 are examples of how we typically see schools handled, and 1 is what Bernice and I have been working on since the last meeting. So, I'll start with the big packet of stuff. So, I'll start in the back. So it's just a single page. It's a schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So this is all the federal money that was expended by the town for the fiscal year. So you spend a total of $690,000 in federal money to operate the town. So some of that was used for the education. So you had $182,000 for the school lunch program.
Where are you? Excuse me.
The last page,
Last name of what?
just a single page.
Of this spend that you got in hand, the very last single
This
page.
thing?
Yep, very last page.
No.
No,
We've got
behind the big long pages.
to turn it up, turn it over, so I'm good.
Oh, okay, I got you. Thank you.
So I said it was a small page.
Okay.
So you spent $146,000 in the airport. So that was vegetation and also the easement work that was done. The school had another $361,000 in funds that they spent from the Department of Education. So that gives you your total of $690,000 that you spent in federal money. This is one of the requirements of the Department of Education. They want to see this as part of their audit. My reasoning behind their thinking is that they want to make sure that the towns are looking at all of the federal money that's being spent. Because what was happening was towns were subject to the single audit requirements and they weren't having the proper audit done. Because no one was looking at what the school was spending or what the town was spending. So that's that one. The next one is Schedule A10. So this is all of the special revenue funds. So these are the grants. So Bernice and I spent quite a bit of time, and so has Marion, going through a lot of these and checking to make sure that the expenses were allocated according to the grant paperwork that was submitted. Also looking at the monies that were received in prior years. Bernice spent quite a bit of time going back and looking at a lot of these grants and donations and stuff like that that were given to see if they actually were going to be spent. So a lot of them got cleaned up. So you see in that closeout transfers to the general fund. So there was some stuff that we reclassified. One of those is if you go about halfway down the USDA sewer grant. So that was being reported in the special revenue fund. We moved that over to the enterprise fund, the sewer department. So that money is now in the sewer department and it's a restricted balance for them. So it's not reported in these special revenues. And that's what we did on a lot of things. We moved them from one place to the other because it wasn't classified totally correct. So there's quite a bit of stuff that got moved around. We went through each of the police department grants, matched up the expenses to the paperwork that was submitted, and we reclassified a few of the expenses so it matched up with those reports. So at the end of the day, it's kind of interesting because the fund balance went from 428,000 to now it's down at 140,000. But that's because a lot of it got reclassified and moved around to where it should have been.
Excuse me, when you say that, is the town putting it in the wrong places, or was it the previous auditor not putting it in the right places, or?
It was a little bit both. It was just some of the things, and Bernice went back and looked and said, well, this isn't really totally correct where it is. Like the USDA grant, that was all part of the sewer department's, was it 1.2 million that they got, which was a combination loan and grant. So it was being shown in here, but it was really actually sewer money.
But it shows somewhere else in the audit.
Yes.
You used to put all of your sewer money in your general fund, and I'll go back to my earlier comment to Bob. When you accepted the grant, we had that special language that we had to vote on that said that we had to create it as an enterprise fund. So you can no longer show the sewer funds in your general fund. They have to be separate. So that's part of continuing that process of separating those funds.
But we've been told that sort of thing for years, but apparently it hasn't been happening.
Well, Bernice and I went back to 2008 and it hadn't been happening. So I can't speak to why, I don't know, but when you adopted that language, it made the requirement then that you must do it, and so that's what we're doing.
Yeah, but it's cleaning up a lot of that stuff. The same thing with the impact fees that were charged.
Right.
So that was 138,000 that moved out to that enterprise fund, because it was actually money that they should have available to do any infrastructure improvements for the system. So it was just, it all just kind of got rolled into one.
The general fund?
Some of it, yes. Some of it was in capital reserve, some of it was in the grant funds that you're looking at now. So it's just a matter of looking through these things, and Bernice and I have spent quite a bit of time on the phone, and I've come here and we've worked to correct a lot of these issues so that it's not an issue in the future.
Okay.
So, keep moving forward. Capital reserves. So,
What page are we on now?
this is Schedule A9, so it's going to the next big one. They should kind of go in order. So these are all the monies that you have invested, and there's also some money that has been allocated to do specific projects. So that's, we essentially get down to the commercial pier debt about halfway down. Those are all stuff that they're projects that were taken out of the reserve accounts to be used for something specific. So they're also part of this capital projects fund. But you have the investments that are above that are generating the income. So you had $1 million in investment income in those reserve accounts in the last fiscal year. You had $17,000 in receipts. Some of those were reimbursements, and some of them were cemetery lot sales. So those are that left-hand column. Investment return is the next one. So it totals $1.1 million in revenue for these funds. So you spent $565,000 of these capital items. So your excess of revenues over under expenditures is $549,000. So you look at this operating transfers in, because a lot of these were housed in the general fund, so we moved them back into this capital reserve account. We had some transfers out, so the net was about $300,000 that increased this fund. So $853,000 is what this fund increased. So you started out with 10 million, and now you're at a little over 11. You have a question, Judy? It looks like you want to ask.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting a little confused.
I have a question. That's the investment fund?
Yeah.
The 11 now, and then the general fund currently has $140,000 in it. Is that what you said earlier? You went from 428 to 140, so there's 140 left in the general fund. And you've got, you went out, you spent 565, but you had 549. I don't know, somehow you got to 11 million. That's in the HM Payson account, the total.
A majority of it is in the HM Basin.
Okay.
And that's just the capital not endowment.
So there's
I'm
another,
just trying to understand it.
there's another, roughly, what, $3 million?
Yeah, because it was 14 last time when we,
Yeah.
that's right. And that's separate. then,
That's-
like
that's
capital
separate
reserve.
because-
It's not, because that's like the,
This is money that
Cemetery
the
and stuff like
taxpayers
that.
have put away over
Right.
the years and it's accumulated.
right.
The other accounts are not, they're money that has been given to the town for a specific purpose.
All right.
So that's where that money is, that's why it's separated out.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
If I could clarify, some of the confusion that I found working with the capital projects is that you folks apparently transferred money at the very beginning of the fiscal year based on what you voted on at town meeting. And you transferred it over to the general fund, and then you spent out of the general fund based on what you voted on. I'm kind of reversing that so that everything that's capital is in the capital fund. Because if you look on this page, for an instance, and you're voting $30,000 again this year, for the backhoe, you only spent $17,000 on the backhoe last year. But yeah, we moved $30,000. That money should not fall back into the general fund balance. That's part of the reason why you're seeing more accounts on here. If we're taking money and using it for capital, if that capital is completed, that money should go back to the HM Payson account and not fall into the general fund. That's why I pulled them out separately here. And asked Fred to pull them out.
Thank you. Finally. It's happened.
So, part of what's been taking so long is we've been
Yes.
rearranging everything. So it's not quite as, very different than it was at the beginning of the year, so we've been
Because
working.
I think, I don't know, maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but to me, if you have to have these separate accounts, because if you're looking at your general fund and this money is in there, your general fund basically is overstated because that money is already designated for elsewhere.
And what was happening was a lot of stuff was being appropriated and it was going into the fund balance at the end of the day. So your surplus was growing, but it was because all of these were getting closed out to the general fund. So now, because we've segregated them out, that's not gonna happen.
So really, at some point in time, in years back, our fund balance basically was inflated because of this money being in there. And we used some of that money to help lower taxes. That's how I'm looking at this now.
That's what I would agree with as well, and I don't believe that was the intention of the townspeople when they voted for these things. Once the project was done, that money should go back to the reserve.
Well, I was always under the impression that that's what happened. And I think that was the intent when we did the ordinance for this, or whatever you want to call it, the policy, was that if that money was not used, it would go back to Payson.
I don't find evidence that that happened, Judy. I find evidence where there were unfinished projects that you carried the money forward to continue the project. But I don't find when the project was done and there was still money left over, or overspent, either way, that the monies were taken back and forth. And I don't want that to happen anymore. That's not the intention of the investment.
Well, it's not what the people voted for.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing. That's not what they voted for.
That's the way I felt, and that's why I've asked Fred to pull them out and separate them for us. And we'll continue to carry them on our books that way.
Good, because I think that's what we need. I mean, that's when we ask for fund balance, what do we have? And to me, all those bills get paid, and that capital money is in a separate account, and that's what the town can use. But with what you're saying, we have overspent. Well, not overspent, we have used money that basically did not belong to the town. It belonged into the capital to help lower taxes.
Or the sewer with the impact fees. As he stated, we pulled $138,000 out of the general fund, and a big portion of that was in 1 year, and I think it was 2005 or 2007, when the jail was built. That alone was $90,000 that went to the general fund balance.
that should have stayed with the sewer.
And I question why this was never brought to the attention of the board before this.
Well, and I can tell you, and Jeff can chime in, it's one of the things the investment committee has kept saying over and over, that we kept bringing that up, that the funds weren't going back in and that they needed to be separated out. And so between the investment committee and having a new auditor, we've been able to move these things, which is, you've been on the investment committee quite a long time. And that's something, that was one of their goals that they were striving for, so.
And as far as the impact fees were concerned, they were posted to the general fund and a general ledger account. They were posted in the sewer fund and a general ledger account. They were posted in the general fund and a revenue account. They were posted in the sewer and a revenue account.
Yeah, there was no consistency whatsoever in where it was posted.
We went way back. We
went a long way back.
We spent a lot of time going way back to trying to figure out. And it was a little bit difficult because you don't have any institutional knowledge because we have such new staff. So we were just digging through the records in the vault.
But we also compared them with what Buck had, because he knew what people had paid for the impact fees.
Yeah.
Well, I know I was a little upset last 2 weeks ago because of the audit taking so long. But if this is what we are having remedies, we're remedying our accounting system and getting things where it's supposed to be, then I commend both of you, all of you, for doing this, because, I mean, I know we've had money and we've spent it that we shouldn't have spent. And I feel very bad about that, because it should have stayed with the capital.
Yep, and the whole idea is to try and keep these things so that you can monitor them and look at them.
Right.
And that's why I'm kind of going through this with you a little bit, because it's important to understand each of those funds and what's left. And then you can do a transfer back as soon as you know stuff's done, the project's done.
Right.
You have no more expenses, so.
Did you have something you wanted to ask or say?
Yeah, it sounds like this is kind of moving in the right direction, but go back to that backhoe lease, which seems very, very straightforward. That when you lease this piece of equipment, the payment probably would be the same.
We have 12 monthly payments that are the same each month.
Right. So, did we have, and I don't have the town report from the last year, but did we have an article to take $30,000?
Yeah, and we have another one this year for $30,000. We've got almost enough still sitting there.
The payments
Go
only
back to
17?
But we only need 17?
Right. And
Well, why would we write an article? It wouldn't-
Well, I was just gonna get to that. I'll speak up for the board of selectmen for a moment. Because they're dealing with audits that are a year old. At the June meeting last year, all the capital articles were written to say not to exceed a certain amount, so there would be no reason for any extra money to go into the general fund to begin with. So we were on top of this ourselves.
We didn't have prices at that point, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, no, always
That's
said
why we
amount
guessed
not
not
to
to
exceed
exceed.
200,000, amount not to exceed 20,000.
Okay.
Before that, it said to take out whatever, and we just took it out. And last year, we started the process of only taking out what we need to avoid the problem you're talking about.
Yeah.
right. And the other thing that we talked about with Fred, we didn't do it for this year because we buried him with enough other things, is to look at the language of the articles when we do the capital articles, to see if we can clean those up a little bit, so.
But at least this year, what is unused will be
Returned.
returned.
So this, you're saying that what we don't spend this year,
I gotta get these numbers so I know exactly what they are, and then see where we are, so that my goal is at June, the end of June, 28th, 27th, somewhere along the way, I'm able to say either this project needs to leave the money here because it's unfinished, or it's finished and we're gonna move the money back to Payson.
It should never be there in the first place. If they're followed as written, that won't be occurring.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I understand is the cash flow was so poor that that money was pulled out the first part of July based on what the warrant articles, and that's what I am finding from historic information, is that when it was voted, the money was pulled out of Payson.
Going way back, we went way back.
because we didn't have cash flow to
We
pay
didn't
the
have
bills.
cash flow to pay the bills, so we would pull it out of Payson in anticipation of spending this money. and then that's where it
Yeah,
was.
even if you spent the money in May, you were still drawing it down in July. So you're using that to get through the low point with cash.
And I understand we need to be doing it as we're spending it. It's like with the ambulance that we purchased this fiscal year, it was the $96,000. I did draw that down on Payson. But it needs to be somewhere near the time frame that we're spending it so that we aren't depleting our cash flow. But I don't hope to bring money over until it's real close to being spent.
Well, and also, if you're drawing it down when you need it, it gives you a better picture of how your cash flows really are. So by drawing it all down in July, you're masking what the issue is, which is you need 2-3 months worth of cash to get through till you can make taxes.
Plus, you're also losing interest by taking all that money at one time and letting it sit in our general fund collecting nothing.
Well, go back to what you made $1 million on $10 million last year, or this fiscal year. So you made 10%.
Right, which is good.
Yeah.
Jason, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious if these past discrepancies is a situation where they should have done it or they must have done it? I mean, do you have to go back and try to fix all this back to when it started, or can we just chalk this up to a bad dream and start fresh now?
I want this done, draw a line in the sand and move forward.
Right, okay, that's what it
Is
seems
what
like,
I'm
right.
hoping
That's
that
the
we
stance she and I
accomplish.
have both taken, is let's get this fixed.
To the
as
best
best
of
as
our
we can,
ability with the knowledge
and
we
let's
have.
do it right from here on out, because it's.
Because we
So
can't
it's
go
all
out
right
the
to do it
past
that
at
way.
this
Yeah,
point.
and she'll spend months in the weeds trying to figure out exactly what needs to be paid back, and it's.
Right.
But we've already spent hours following the trail to find out where it went. That's how we found
The
it.
biggest items we pulled out, the impact fees, the USDA, some of the other items, the capital that needed to be moved around. We've done the best of our ability over the last 2 or 3 years. And my goal is to get that to a point where he can hand me an audit. I know what my beginning numbers are, work through what we've got per activity this year so that we'll have better numbers for the end of June 30th, 18.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's.
Yes, Bob?
I've got the warrant that we just had this public hearing on, and the language, and I'm not picking on the backhoe, but somebody used it for an example, but we're going to appropriate the sum of $30,000 from the capital reserve account. It doesn't say up to.
Doesn't? Does on the rest of them.
So we've already got $12,000 in that account. We're going to add another 30 to it, but then we're going to spend 17 when we get the bill.
That may be what the warrant article says, but I don't see a sense in pulling money more out than what we need. I know that it says up to, I mean, we can pull it
It
out and
doesn't
let
say
it
up
sit
to
there.
there.
I know, but
What's the number there?
It's Article 46. It's on this.
And that's why we talked about, we didn't bite all the bullets this year. This language that you used going way, way back. So that's what we're gonna work with Fred going forward, is a better way so that it's truly reflective of what your need is for that year.
Well, I was looking at like Article 38, 39, 40, 41, and 42, and they all say not to exceed the amount.
That was last year's.
No.
No.
Oh, they're right in front of it. There's one we just called.
Yeah, that's 2018.
Yeah, it says not to exceed.
Okay.
But the word-
But this year is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a little bit different because of the fact we're pulling out $1 million for our capital improvement. And anything that we do not spend for capital is supposed to go, is it going to go back? Or is it, we have an article that says that it has to go to lower taxes, whatever's left over.
out of the whole million.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
how
but
is
that's
it going?
different, that's different. We're specifically asking to do this.
That's what I'm saying, for this year. We are, normally if we didn't have that article, yes, you would be right. If we had $30,000 in there for something and it was only 17, yes, it would go back into Payson. But this year, because of the article that we have, it's gonna be put towards lowering the tax commitment. If we will draw out $1 million and we only spend 700,000,
But you're not gonna know how much you're gonna spend this fiscal year until the fiscal year's over.
You will, you'll know what your payments are and what you have to pay.
You'll know what your payments are, but as far as some of, I mean, the debt service is an easy part of it, but the other ones are not gonna be as easy.
Why not?
Your capital money's gonna be pretty clear. You're gonna take out what you need for payments, and then the reason you have that article this year is because you knew you didn't have much of a fund balance. And so you wanted to use, that's why you had that was part of your discussion, is why you have that article.
When the books close on June 30th,
Correct.
that problem shouldn't be in this year's books,
That's right.
if they follow the town warrant.
Right, but we're talking about the warrant articles that are coming up. You're taking $1 million out for fiscal year 19.
Right.
Technically, we're taking out up to $800,000 for various projects, and we are specifically taking out $200,000 to lower taxes.
That's not what Judy's saying. Judy is saying
But that's not
whatever
what
you're
the
not
article
using.
states. That's not what the article states. And I don't think that was the intention. The intention was that whatever is left over, if I'm not mistaken, of the capital, we were taking out $1 million. And we estimated that we were gonna spend $700,000 on capital. And the remainder would go into lowering the taxes.
Yeah.
But the intent is that if, let's say, we only spend $600,000 on capital,
Or way less than that.
But you're still.
then the rest of it has to go to lower the taxes. It does not go back to basic.
It can only lower the taxes, the 200 that you're voting on, realistically for fiscal year 19.
Right.
The rest of it would have to carry forward to lower fiscal year 20, because you're not gonna know what's left over out of any of those other capitals till the end of June 30, 19. Isn't that correct?
If you know what your payments are for your capital projects, you know how much you have to pay starting July 1st.
And they're all gonna be completed before we commit taxes in September?
I don't think we have, most of these are for purchases, I think, and payments.
Yeah, purchase.
So if they're all done before you commit taxes, then you would know what's left over.
Right. I mean, I'm pretty sure that if the truck passes for Parks and Rec, they're not gonna wait very
No,
long
I'm
before they
sure.
purchase that. So you're gonna know that number. I'm sure that Doug is not gonna wait very long for his new plow truck, but if you wanted to, Doug, that'd be okay. But, so I mean, I think this year might be the exception. Other years we've had like roofing projects and things like that. And
That
those
didn't get
projects
done.
did carry to different years, but most of these are actually purchases. So I'm pretty sure Doug will pay you pretty quick, won't you? So I do feel.
So in that
confident
case, then we'll know the number by September when you commit taxes.
Okay. Oh, I think we're going beyond the audit, I think, honestly. We're getting
But it's
off
good,
base
it's good
here.
discussion though.
Yeah,
Because it's,
Bob.
Yeah, I'm not really trying to change the subject, but in the past, we have had an article, and we voted on it at some time, you know, toward the fall, on what we might take out of the fund balance to help reduce taxes. I think we've done that just about every year.
We have that article.
And Mary, you said that you felt that the fund balance would be in the $400,000 range. Are you not thinking that now?
No,
Based on finding out now that some of this money that was possibly there really shouldn't have been there?
Correct.
So what do you think it might be now? The $140,000 that she...
Well, we don't know what's gonna drop as of June 30, so I don't really know. But, when we found that, was it $90-some odd thousand for the jail impact fee? I mean, when we found some of those old ones going back and moved that money, I kept saying to Bernice, please let's not get to the red. Because, I mean, we were moving a lot of sewer money, so I really don't know. I'll have a better idea, probably the first meeting in June, because it will be closer to what we're gonna expend for budgets, but I really don't know right now.
I'd like to comment that, and I know that I'm the new kid on the block here, but I've seen a fund balance policy, not seeing evidence of it being followed at all. I don't know how we take $600,000 when we got $650,000 in fund balance and use it to offset taxes, and then we turn around and borrow money every year. And we take money out of Payson before we need it to keep our cash flow going. That practice needs to be looked at seriously, in my opinion.
We weren't told about those sort of practices.
Well,
You know, every year we go through this with an auditor and treasurer telling us how great everything is. And this year we're not hearing that.
I'm not saying that things aren't great. I mean, you guys have $12 million sitting in an account, but it's earmarked for capital. It's not earmarked for reducing taxes. If we're talking the operation of the town itself, you need to keep a healthy fund balance. And for a town this size, and I believe if you look at your fund balance policy, it says 60 days of your previous year's budget. We're 1 day of our previous year budget. That's a scary place to be. And it's scary for us to have to write out a TAN application the very first part of July. I mean, I'm looking at our cash right now. We just paid out a school payment. We're already going to the $1 million mark, and we've still got a month to go or more before the end of the fiscal year. Our cash flow
That's 1 month worth of expenses.
is not in the situation that it should be for a town this size.
Part of the reason that that says capital improvement fund is because at some point in the past, somebody stood up here, and I don't recall who it was, or even who it was there for selectmen, said that the town couldn't have money in the bank, but they could have money in a capital improvement fund. So somebody said, oh, geez, let's call it a capital improvement fund, and somebody else said, geez, yeah, that's a good idea. So that's what happened, and that's been called that ever since. So it's not, I mean, that money could be used to reduce taxes every year. It could be used to give huge rebates to tax. I mean, you could use it for anything. That's, you know, originally, it was just raised and put in the bank. I remember going to town meetings 45 years ago, and they was putting a couple $100,000 in the bank, and taxes weren't going up. But, so it's become common knowledge that it's a capital improvement account, but it's really just money in the bank.
Based on that statement, Bob, I would say that at some point in time, the town of Wiscasset probably had a healthy undesignated fund balance and all of this other money. And it's not a good idea to have a huge amount of undesignated funds, and it's not fair to your taxpayers. You're right. So you put it aside into a capital so that when you need to purchase big pieces of equipment or you need to do big repairs, you have money set aside to do it. But the day when the town's fund balance is good, it's not there.
Well, you know, with all due respect, he wasn't here listening, and this wasn't fund balance money. This was an article every year on the town warrant that would say to raise and appropriate $500,000 to put in, just to put in the bank. And that's the way it was done. It wasn't fund balance money. I'm sure there was a healthy fund balance.
Well, it was taxpayer money that went in.
Well, yeah, of course, right. Yeah.
But the whole idea behind them is that you're saving for when you need it.
Right, exactly, for whatever purpose.
Yeah,
It
but
doesn't
you're buying
have
a
to be.
public works truck this coming year, and you're paving, and all that stuff. If it wasn't for that reserve, you wouldn't be able to do it.
Well,
That's why the reserve is there.
I just wanted to
And you're
say one other thing about the using all the fund balance money. I wasn't a selectman a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, but I sat here in the audience and watched the selectmen struggling with this. It would be like, we either take this money out of the fund balance or the taxes are gonna go up 8, 10, 12%. So they would just take the money, the fund balance money, and just try to mitigate that huge tax increase. You know, it's not like they said, well, let's not follow the policy because we don't like it. They didn't follow the policy because they were backed into a corner, because usually they didn't get the right information until the last minute. And then they just have to do that, or do something similar. So I'm not blaming anybody. I mean, I think I've watched the selectmen make these hard choices.
No, agreed.
With very, very little to work with, and it would always be at the last minute, the last meeting before setting the commitment, there'd be a panic because suddenly the figures didn't add up. And frankly, we're seeing the same thing, and I'm not blaming Marion because I realize she wasn't even here when a lot of this happened, but you said you thought there'd be a $400,000 fund balance. And now it looks like it's not even gonna be close. And so at the last minute again, we're gonna panic and we're gonna have to take what fund balance there is to mitigate another huge tax increase. And the problem isn't the accounting, the problem is we spend too much money.
Well, that, you're having a later.
Okay.
But following up on that, you've taken a whole bunch of money out of the general fund and put it into a capital improvement or whatever.
Yep.
All this here, there, and whatever.
Yep, some of the.
There's nothing to prevent us going and asking for an article to take that money to use to spend taxes.
Yep. I mean,
Which
Right.
is, you know.
We could anytime.
ultimately, it's up to the taxpayer, so you get their approval to take money out of wherever and you can do that.
I mean, I don't think anybody's here is disagreeing with what either one of you are saying, but what Bob is saying is just a lot of truth to it. It's not right to leave 500,000 in the general fund and let taxes go up 10% throughout the town.
What's owed on the backhoe? What's the balance?
I don't know what the balance is right off.
On the backhoe, at the end of June of 17,
This is just a crazy thought, but we're gonna have 12,000 in there plus another 30. Can we?
Marion already asked that question earlier.
Pay-
We might be able to just pay it off.
That's what I mean, if.
It will save us some interest.
Absolutely.
it's 88,000 at the end of June of 17.
That's what we owe.
Yeah.
But if we took $42,000, because we're asking the taxpayers to appropriate that money, why not put it towards it right now, get us back to zero? You come back to us next year and say, we need $17,000 and we'll put that on the article. You know, that's
what I said.
I just, does that make sense to the board? Do you know what I mean? Why let it sit there if, you know, let's, you know, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
I think part of the problem is that if I had $15 million and I wanted it back, I probably wouldn't go lease one. And we have done that now for quite a few years on quite a few pieces of equipment. And the reason is it lets everybody get something new all at once instead of just buying what you need.
Well, and keep in mind, Bob, the interest rate on that loan is 2.3%.
So, Bobby, that's why we did it, because we made between 6 and 8 on our money. So it was cheaper to borrow it, believe it or not. I know it sounds crazy, than it was to spend our own money.
No, that's not crazy. I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, can we get back to the audit? Sorry, we got off track.
Okay, so Schedule A8, one of the big pages. So this is the trust funds. So one of the things that was in there was the Montsweet Dam, which really wasn't a trust fund, it was more of a capital item, so that got moved out. So
What do you mean? That money is earmarked, the $100,000 was earmarked from CMP for us to keep there.
right.
Is that what you mean, or just the interest you moved? What?
It was, no, we took it out of the fund that it was in and we
Took it out of
moved it
trust
over to another fund.
It's for capital, is it
It's-
not?
The
The
actual.
dam?
The
No,
dam's
we
money?
were given that money in a,
Central Maine Power bequeathed the dam to the town. And
So
we
that
gave
can't be
that
moved.
$100,000 for maintenance. It's very
It's for
specific.
maintenance of the dam.
It's still a separate
Specific.
account.
Yeah, it's on his
It's just
schedule right
in
now.
a different
Yeah,
section.
we moved
of
it over to capital fund instead of trust fund.
you got it.
If you-
Because this is my question. I was on the board the first year that money came in, and I've noticed that it's now $130,000.
Yeah.
can we take that $30,000 and put it into our fund balance?
No.
No, that needs to be for whatever needs to be done in that dam area.
We were just, but part of that deal was to keep $100,000. Am I making sense that we don't need to keep $1 more in there?
That money, my understanding was that to make it palatable for the town to take that over, because CMP wanted to get rid of it, that they offered $100,000, and I think calling it a trust fund is probably not the right word, but it's the right idea. That money would be used, and the interest would be used to maintain the dam. If we were smart about it, we can keep the $100,000 and use the interest to do improvements to the property. We don't have to spend it only on the dam. We can use it to make improvements on that property.
Right.
The property that they gave us.
I guess that I have been after a bunch of different committees and this and that to do something out there. And if we're not going to do anything out there, we haven't, ever since we were given that money, why not use that interest, which has nothing to do with that project, for us?
Well,
You know?
because it came from that seed money, it is part of the project.
And that's another subject that we're gonna have to deal with the conservation
I
committee.
mean, I'm not mad at that.
No, I understand.
No, but
I agree with you.
but when I just saw it balloon like that wasn't what that $100,000 was designed for.
I'm just glad it's out of the general fund and then it's all separate identity.
Yeah, it's,
Because before you know it, it'll be gone. Okay.
The cemetery operations is another one that we pulled out separate. We always move money over from Payson into the general fund for the cemetery operations. So we moved it to the cemetery trust so that the fund balance never lapses to the general fund either.
Okay.
so that was $43,000, that's the one that's down at the bottom of that.
And that does not get carried over, correct? If they don't spend that money, it goes back into the account, correct?
No. The warrant article is written specifically, I believe this was one of the things that Ben wanted to do a couple of years ago. The warrant article specifically says that you appropriate the amount of money for the operations of the cemetery less whatever is spent. So if you approve $66,000 for the cemeteries and there's 43 left, the draw out of HM Payson is 20 odd. It's not the full amount. So that is one article.
So we carry it forward and then just draw out what we need
To make up the balance.
Okay. It just doesn't go into the general fund and sit there.
It does
It
not.
goes back into
The
the
cemetery.
perpetual fund.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, so we're keeping these all segregated,
Okay.
because you have multiple individual funds that are part of the town. So you have some that are invested in cash, in Payson, you have some that are sitting in the checkbook of the town.
Okay.
So most of the stuff that's in the general fund is mostly a reimbursement basis. So like the easement grant and all that from the FAA, that's reimbursement based. You would pay the expenses first and then you get reimbursed.
Well, it seems to me it would make the accounting situation a lot easier by having everything where it should be, instead of looking at one lump sum in the general fund and say, oh, well, we have all this money.
I mean, that's why we've been spending so much time trying to clean this up, so that in the future, it's all the way it should be.
Okay, all right.
And speaking of cleaning it up, there's a bunch of scholarship accounts here, for $6, $7, that sort of thing. Is there any way to wipe that stuff off the floor?
Well, that's
That's the
just the income, the interest.
A lot of those small ones are in cash accounts. So they're either Bass Savings, the First, or I think Canada
And they're
National.
schools, they're not.
And a bunch of those are the schools' scholarship funds.
That's the interest on it, that's not what the fund balance is.
Yep.
Fund
So,
balance is part of the rate.
Yeah, there's actually like $5,000 there. I mean, that the interest is pretty pathetic.
yeah, but of that 2.9 million, was it 73,000 is money that the school has in separate cash accounts for all of those scholarships.
Okay.
So that's why the interest is so low, because you're not earning anything on your money.
Do you have to separate it out such that some of these belong to the town and some belong to the schools?
Right. But it's all under the umbrella of the town of Wiscasset. So they're a piece of that.
It's all part of the capital reserve.
No, most of the ones that you have on the school are separate cash accounts. So they're,
The scholarships and stuff.
yeah,
They were listed on that list of everything that added up to 14 million or 11 million.
No.
They're not on there.
Nope.
Scholarships are all in there, and that thing listed at Bobby last time. I'm just trying to understand it.
no,
I'm
it's,
not fighting you, I'm just trying to figure
No,
out what's going on here.
it's, because you get the Marie Harrison, Daniel Lehman, Loudis, Mark Berry,
Thank you, Doug.
Sewell, and Ralph, those are all your scholarship funds.
But they have to be included in our audit, is that
Yeah,
correct?
because you are the town,
We are the
they're
town.
a department of the town.
The
So
department.
what they're,
Okay.
what they have custody of ultimately is under the board's umbrella as well.
Okay.
So that responsibility lies with essentially both boards.
All right, thank you, I understand that. Okay, continue.
So then you get into this single page, it's not one of the big sheets. It says Schedule A7. So this is the non-major funds. So this is kind of a summary of the bigger sheets.
Okay.
And the way that the governmental accounting standards want you to do it is anything that they consider major. So you've got to do a little calculation of 10% and 5% of the assets, liabilities, revenue, and expenses, and anything that exceeds that has to be reported separately. But anything that doesn't gets to get kind of rolled into these non-major funds. So you get the special revenue funds, capital projects, and the permanent funds. So these are all the small dollar value funds summarized. So that's Schedule A7 is the revenue and expenses to get you to where your fund balance is. And then Schedule A6 is how the funds are at the end of the year. So if you look down at your fund balance, there's assigned and unassigned in that special revenue. So the unassigned is negative because any accounts that are in the red have to get shown as unrestricted or unassigned. And most of that $243,000 is the FAA money that you're due that I hope you have been paid by now for, but
Yes, but as of June 30th.
but as of
we
June
have-
30th, it hadn't. And there's no guarantee you're gonna get all that money. So you don't really book a receivable for it. And then, the same thing with some of the school accounts. So your Title I, Title II, those are the same, they operate kind of the same way. So they'll show a negative balance, but eventually you get the money.
Now, the assigned, the 384,000,
Those are the ones that have a positive balance.
they have a positive balance.
Yep.
And those cannot be touched because they are assigned to different entities, is that correct?
They're assigned for a specific purpose. So as long as you're spending the money for that purpose, then you're okay.
Okay.
Multiple purposes are adding up to $384,000. Like that's a group of
Yeah,
assigned monies.
Yes, it's a bunch of different
Right, okay.
restricted monies.
Right.
So it's not necessarily one specific thing, it's a whole bunch.
What could be included in that assigned, for example?
That Bailey account, right?
So if you go to that, back to Schedule A10, one of the big ones that pulled out.
Okay.
So if you look at that right-hand column, any of the ones that have a positive balance would be included in that $384,000. So you go down through and you see that $116,000 for the impact fee. So that is not the impact fee for the sewer, that's the impact fee that Shaw's paid.
Okay.
I don't know how many years ago it was many years ago, but it's been segregated out in cash and built and earning interest. So now it's available to spend for road projects that,
And that's the only thing we can spend it on?
No, 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 no. That fund is very specific to the Birch Point Road and doing the improvement by norms. That's, we can't touch that. That's our share to pay for the MDOT project. That's not
So-
for town road project.
so when the expenses are paid for that road project, it will reduce that $116,000.
That $116,000 would come out of the 384.
Yes.
Okay.
So as you're spending it, it'll reduce that
It'll reduce the
384,
assignment.
because that's a
Okay.
piece of it. And then it will reduce that 116, because that's the individual contract.
Okay, all right, I understand that, okay. All right.
So let me speed it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So page 39, so Schedule A3. It's one of the small ones. You gotta put through the 3 big ones.
Okay.
So, your question to me last time I was here is how much money do I have?
I don't like your answer.
They're numbers.
I know, but I don't like them.
So, you're about $58,000.
I see that.
It's actually a little more than that.
Yeah, I think Bernice and I were discussing a couple things in her office today. I think it might change a little bit. 'Cause we were-
That was
Maybe up to 70, maybe.
As of June of 2017, we had $58,000, basically.
Well, you used 619
Yes.
to reduce
Well,
taxes, remember?
that's gone, as far as I'm
So
concerned,
that's
that's
gone.
gone.
Exactly.
So we
So
had
this is-
$58,000.
That's where you're starting out when Bob's talking about the $400,000 that Marion is talking about. That's
Okay,
hopefully part of that 400,000.
so anything we've gotten this year has increased
That.
that.
We hope.
We won't, but we won't know for a while.
Hopefully your excise taxes were strong.
So you don't have 140, you have 58. Really?
Okay.
Well, that was as of June 30, because we took the
So- so
So what does the
619.
140 mean then? What is that number if it's not the actual number? So you said you had 140,000 in your general fund, and I asked you that, and Bob's using that number. Now it's turned to 58. In actual cash, is that what that means?
No,
Other than 140, I guess.
no.
He's talking about the 810 schedule at the bottom, the
But you literally
147.
look
Okay,
at
that's
fund
a
versus-
separate fund. That's a separate fund.
Okay, so what is that? That's not available for anything? That 140?
140 is for a specific purpose.
What was that purpose then?
It's for your special revenue.
Yeah, it's through special revenue.
For your
So,
Shaw's impact
Yep.
fees, for your,
That's money that Shaw's gave
yes.
for being Shaw's, they paid you
Yes.
that?
No, the
For
MDOT
the
required
Oh,
them
for
to
their
pay
own.
that for their entrance fee
Okay.
when they did the development there. And that money had to be held in reserve for 2 future
All right,
projects.
so that isn't actually usable. You only have 58.
It's usable for the designated purpose.
so
right? It's-
the undesignated, the stuff that's available to spend or to reduce taxes is only about 58,000.
Okay, so we have
Yes,
$58,000. Okay.
Yeah, it gets confusing because you talk about all these different funds and
Right.
everything is so segregated. You have quite a few different funds within the town, so.
Okay.
So I'll kind of stop there with the financials. One of the conversations that Bernice and I have had is how the school is handled. And you guys are currently paying the monthly, essentially, amount into their cash account.
Right.
And I gave you 2 sets of financial statements. I wanted to give you one of ours, and I pulled one off the internet. But I will have you go to page 3 of the Scarborough one, and page 5 of the one for Bristol.
Now, you showed us these, I believe, when we interviewed you
Yep.
When the finance committee interviewed the our
Yep.
probably fees at that time.
Bristol.
Yep, we have Bristol and Scarborough, right?
Yep. So Scarborough was done by another auditor, and we did Bristol School. And the thing to kind of point out is the town is holding custody of the assets.
Correct.
So it's under the town's umbrella. And the way that you're doing it is you're treating it like an RSU or a SAD or a CSD. In which case you pay a monthly assessment. Well, talking to Bernice, it's the first time you've seen this way of doing it, correct? And I don't have any towns that treat it that way. Basically, the way that they set it up is the school gives them the loan amount and they transfer the money into the school's checking account and then the bills get paid.
Right.
So Bernice is sitting here going, I have to borrow $1.5 million, $1.7 million, in tax anticipation note money. But at the same time, the school is sitting on a bunch of cash. So you asked the question last time.
Right, yep, I'm
About
waiting for the answer.
The 1.1 million.
Right.
That was
You
one.
call it a do or?
Yeah, a due to from.
Do
So
to
that's,
from.
in the Scarborough one, I think it does a good job outlining the numbers are big. It says due from the town is 6.6 million.
Right, well, this
far.
Oh, okay, so 5.
On page 3.
So the way they've got it set up is they've got $6.6 million sitting in the town's checkbook at the end of June. And they have a due from the town. So the town owes them the $6 million, but when the school submits the bills, they transfer the money.
That's exactly what happened here. When we got a bill, we paid it.
Right.
There's no money owed, because if we did, there would be a bill.
Right, and so you look at it, and at the end of the day, they've got $2.3 million in fund balance, which is part of that 1.1 million is included in the fund balance. So if you
So
look
that's,
at
we're
one-
looking at Scarborough. You're
Right.
talking about Wiscasset now.
Right, but they've got that 6.6 and they subtract 4.3 million in liabilities. So the summer salaries, the accounts payable that were paid. And the town paid all the bills. It's just, at the end of the day, there's $2.3 million that's sitting there that is reserved for the school.
You're talking about Wiscasset. You are,
Nope.
you're talking about Scarborough.
Sorry, 2.3.
All right.
So 2.3.
So let's go back to Wiscasset then. I mean,
Yep.
is that the same situation? I mean, I guess it's not getting any clearer. I'm trying to understand. So they're saying that we shouldn't be paying, the town shouldn't be paying the school every month. They should be doing it differently.
Yes.
And what way would that be?
We would be,
Go back to the way we did it.
right, Shelley
Which
would let
was?
us know what the price of the warrant is, whether it's AP or payroll, and ask me to transfer money from the town's account to the school's account to make sure that those checks are all covered.
It'd be one lump sum.
It would be one lump sum per warrant.
So it wouldn't
That might be
matter
great.
if
If
the
we're
warrant.
starting over, I mean, I'm just asking as a person here, not as a representative. We started over next year.
Starting July 1st.
We would in theory give it all at one time, and then not be responsible for being sure of those payments.
No, 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 no.
No.
No, 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 no.
Each warrant article that the school presents to us, we pay it.
Each warrant that you folks
We
sign.
don't just pay a chunk of money.
Right.
So say your payroll warrant's $100,000 and your AP warrant's $150,000. So you'll do up the checks, just like you normally do. Call Bernice and say, we've got $250,000 in warrants that are going out. She would say, okay, I'm gonna transfer from the town account to the school account $250,000. So another example is payroll's $100,000, but you have $400,000 in AP warrant. So now you've got $500,000, so you tell Bernice I need $500,000, she would move it into the school checking account, and the bills will get paid.
Okay, that sounds good.
With-
But what about the old money? You know what I mean? Is that, I mean, what happened to,
It's going to increase. basically, we are holding your cash, have been, for a while. It's still due to you.
Right, but you
It's
don't have it because you only have $58,000.
No,
No,
we're talking
you're not
cash
using it.
versus fund balance. You're talking two different beasts.
All
Okay?
right, yeah.
So two reasons why I'm proposing that we go back to the way it's supposed to be. First, you're not an RSU when you're not a district, you are a department of us. Just like the transfer station, the police department are a department of us. We have cash flow issues.
So this was the way that you paid your share of the RSU.
Right now.
The new school department, and I wasn't here then, the new school department continued in that manner, as opposed to the way that
Or I
was
think it
scheduled.
brought that manner and came back to that manner, and I'm not exactly sure the reason why. I just know that as an auditor for other towns years ago, when I was doing auditing and talking with Fred and looking at, that's why I asked him to bring a couple of other audits. There's always an IOU, for the lack of a better word, the due-to-due-from between the town and the school. We hold your cash. We do owe it to you.
It doesn't
You
change.
do, so you're saying that you do, and you're holding it at this point.
We are holding it. And at June 30, what I propose doing is whatever cash you have above and beyond what you have for outgoing money comes back to the town. And then Shelley would let me know, I've done a warrant for the school, transfer this much money, so those checks will clear. And then at the end of the year, it will still be determined what you have for fund balance and what you owe to everybody else and what we owe to you. But it would help the town with cash flow in hopes that I wouldn't have to run right out and take out a TAN at the first of the year. I'm hoping to not take one out at all.
All right, well, it's obvious you can't go on like it's been going on.
Right, and I mean, the warrant articles, what, $17,000 is what you budgeted for tax anticipation notice.
And we paid $8,500 this year in interest to borrow that money.
So the whole idea is to try and get it so that the cash flow is a little bit better here at the town to save the big umbrella money.
Is this money an issue with the state?
No, in fact, I talked to two people at the Maine Department of Education today, and the town school is a department, and that's the way that it should be being run, is that the town is the oversight for it ultimately, that unless we have a town charter that authorizes the select people to not see those warrants and sign off on them, the select people should be seeing the school warrants. And we should be transferring that money as it's being spent.
They're saying that the selectmen should see the school warrant?
Yes, unless there is a town charter that says otherwise.
When we first withdrew from the RSU, that's how it was set up. We got an invoice and we paid it, and I've said it, Jason, for forever. That's why we don't owe you any money, is because what you did is you gave us a bill and we paid it, because we were one organization, we were one town. So this, over the years, has changed, and it shouldn't be. It should be an invoice for a bill, you know?
So how much money do you say that we should be paying the schools?
We need to pay them whatever the town votes to raise and appropriate to give them the town. We don't have to pay it out to them in cash. We need to earmark it and hold it for them. We need to give them the cash that they need to cover their bills as they're being spent.
I'm talking about the old bills, the money that they say we owe them now.
It's still just gonna sit there. I mean, yes, we still owe it to them. It was 1.1 million in the audit.
Yeah. So it's still available. I mean, they could spend that $1.1 million to have nothing. I mean, and you have to pay the bill.
And we would have the money to transfer into their account to make that check good.
You should.
Well, where is that money inside?
Where's that money? The
I asked you
1.1?
first.
The 1.1 is in the audit?
Well, I mean, you're telling us it's there.
It's a mix of many different things. So it's not just cash, it's also taxes receivable. So.
What do you mean by cash receivables? What are we waiting for? Who hasn't paid up?
A lot of
A lot of people.
You have got a very large amount of tax liens.
We've done.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. The town report showed last year that what, $230,000 owed in taxes. That's a far cry from $1 million.
In the current year taxes, perhaps.
Yeah.
But you've got liens, you've got tax acquired property, you've got personal property.
every year it's about 200,000.
No.
Of current year perhaps.
But that rolls into the next year, into the next year, into the next.
There's taxes sitting on the books from back in the 1990-somethings for tax.
I mean, we looked at
Required
one
and for personal.
and the person, if they get the homestead exemption, wouldn't have had to pay taxes. So, I mean, it's just a multitude of things, and, you know,
I thought we were working on getting rid of a lot of this tax.
Well, some of it, it's gonna have to come forward and be written off, like the old personal property and things like that to clear the books, but we're not to that. Like I said, we didn't bite all the bullets in 1 year, so.
There was no way possible.
you know,
Well, okay, I mean, I've often suggested it, that it would be legit for this board to put an article for the townspeople to forget any debts we might owe the schools. That's it, it's over with.
It's not, they're a department within you, so there really is no debt. All there is I promise I'm gonna pay $1.1 million in expenses, you just give me the bills and we'll give you cash. So it's funds that are being carried over for their benefit.
But that makes it difficult because the school only gets this money within the cost settings that the town people vote for it.
Right.
But I mean,
Seems like you know full well that we can't just give you a bill because. we
Well,
have
you
to-
give them a warrant to pay the bill. I mean, ultimately, you submit a bill to the town, they have to pay it.
That warrant is the bill, for all of the people that you paid, for all the vendors that you were paid. That's the bill that's submitted to us, that we in turn transfer the money over for those checks to clear the
Right,
bank.
right,
So
right.
basically, the school department has, just as we do, an accounts payable warrant on a weekly basis or every 2 weeks, and a payroll every week or every 2 weeks, correct? That's what I'm assuming. They sign off on it, somebody in the school department, the school board signs off on it,
Sign off on it very often, don't you?
and ends up giving it, I guess, to your financial person,
Shelley.
Shelley. Then Shelley would have to give it to the town to be
You guys vote on
reimbursed.
it and you pay it, right?
To be,
Yes.
let's say it's $375,000 for that month, that week. Then Bernice would issue a check for, or what
No,
transfer
I would just do
money.
an online transfer.
Transfer the $375,000 into the school account instead of the $502,000 we pay every month.
And there may be some months that we pay more than the 500, depending
Correct,
upon what's
correct.
going on.
Invoice, right?
But there's gonna be some that are less.
But I do like the idea of the fact that the Board of Selectmen should have some, either, not approval, but at least have the ability to.
Shelley's been sending me copies of the warrants as they've been coming. I haven't printed them off because they're multiple pages. But if we could maybe, I'll print off just the check register rather than all the detail behind it. Because she has been, I've been working with Shelley to get some things done so that our books are supposed to mirror theirs.
Mhm.
And I've been working with Shelley to make that happen.
So, yeah, and most of our towns handle it that way. They just pay the bills as they come due.
Okay, so that makes sense. And this has been bypassed by the Department of Education. This is procedure that we can do this and no problem.
Yes, I've spoken to 2 people at the Department of Education today. I have their emails actually.
Okay. We don't need town approval to change this.
They're a department of us.
The department of ours. Okay.
They're not
No
a
different than
district.
Public Works or the police department.
So this is something we can start as of July 1st?
I won't change it midstream.
No, I wouldn't expect it midstream. But I think that would be, I think we need to have a clear definition of where our money is and where it's going, because it seems like we've had it everywhere. I think the auditors in the past have not really been forthright in knowing exactly where.
I don't think that that's necessarily true. You guys, no, I really don't. I mean, some of the, I'm not throwing stones, I'm just gonna say, some of the work that was done just to come up with the information that we've got was tedious because of the way things were posted. I'll just leave it as that.
Okay, all right.
And I will disagree with that a bit. I've had many disagreements with other people. But I'm not clear where we find this money that if we don't really have it.
It's sitting in your checkbook, some of it is. But it's also in your outstanding taxes. So you need to collect the taxes in order to pay the bills. I mean, it's no different than a private company. You know, you have perform a service, $1,000, you have $1,000 in your checkbook, you have a $1,200 bill, so you have to wait to pay that $1,200 bill until that $1,000 comes in from the work that you provided. So you've assessed the taxes to all the properties. You said we need $12 million to pay our bills. Not everybody pays that $12 million. And that's part of the reason why your surplus is so low, is because you haven't collected all those taxes.
Or ambulance receivables, which is
Yeah.
also a part of our accounts receivable, don't forget.
What is?
The ambulance receivables is also part of us, their department of us as well.
Well, I just don't believe that we're owed over $1 million in taxes.
Come in and we'll show you where,
Yeah.
Unless you're including Mason Station.
got it.
Yep. It's been assessed.
But that's been written off. Well, we're in court, but I don't know that anyone will live long enough to see it.
Mary, if you don't pay your taxes in Wiscasset, nothing happens ultimately?
No. Then we go through the lien process, and there have actually been, within this last year, the town has put properties up for sale and have actively and aggressively gone after taxpayers that have not paid, and that's why the collection rate has increased a little bit, is because of this issue.
So what the piece here says there's stuff going back to the 90s, personal property taxes, or that's not the same as your house then?
No, personal property is
Right.
business equipment.
Right, okay.
And part of that is also the state changed some of their laws on what is taxable and retail
We took them
and
off the books.
machinery and that sort of stuff. So that's something that we hope to work on in the next year to try to clean some of that up. So.
Right. And I know it's probably not a popular idea, but other places I've lived, you have 2 years. You can be 2 years behind on your property taxes, but that's it, you can't be.
But it's 18 months in Maine, the lien matures in 18 months.
Right,
And then
okay.
you send a 45-day foreclosure. And so,
And that brings the checks in.
and then we move forward from there. And periodically, it's typically every 3 or 4 months, we bring it to the board to ask them to take an action so that we can put properties up for sale. But this board has been pretty steady on their methods of collection. So.
My first year, Jason, we sold 6 or 7 pieces of property and it stunk. So
I'm
that's
sure
why we
it's
got,
terrible.
it
Yes,
is,
it
so
is.
that's why we got
I know,
really
I know.
aggressive with our
I'm just asking.
policy.
Okay, let's get back to the audit.
So I'm done for now, unless you have
Okay,
questions.
Bob.
Under the, I'm pretty sure I understand what you're talking about, and it sounds good, and if other towns are doing it and having good results with it, that's fine. Under this, if we started doing this way, you know, I've been told that the school has a healthy fund balance. Now, if we was to do it this way, they wouldn't have a fund balance, would they?
They still have a fund balance, they always have a fund balance. Because you are assessing the, was it 6.5 million, what it was? Every year, so that is what they get to spend. So they haven't spent all of it, so they've actually, have restricted some of it for, special ed, cost.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, that restricted money is sitting in their fund balance. So it's one lump number on these financial statements, but if you look at theirs, it's broken out into different parts.
Well, if I realize some of that would be designated, but if you took, how would they handle that? Would they, if they needed $5 million, or if they came up with a $5 million budget, could they then say that was a $4.8 million budget and take $200,000 out of fund balance to make that work? Or would it be possible? It would be possible.
Yeah, I mean,
They use their
when
fund
they do
balance
their
to
budget,
reduce-
they say.
They
just
could-
like we do.
Okay,
Yeah, it's the same thing.
So it actually exists.
Oh, yes,
It's
and they
real
use
money.
their fund balance each, I mean, they need a fund balance just like we do. and they decide how much of it that they can use to reduce the commitment on our behalf.
It sounded like if we was doing it the way you said with paying the bills as they came in, that they would have no fund balance because there would be no way to
No, their fund
generate.
balance isn't gonna change, the only thing that's gonna change
That's
is
just
the
what we're trying
cash.
to build a budget on that.
I give you a budget and I take your checkbook, it's no different. That's basically what we're doing. They still have their checkbook, their checks are gonna write out of there, we're just gonna make sure they're covered. Doesn't change what they have for revenues or expenses at all, and their fund balance.
And what was so confusing last year is that it was the same auditor for the town and the school. And they said, two different people said different things. You know what I mean?
Yes, we do.
Right, you know?
But whether there's two different auditors or not, what the school has, we should be able to mirror. I'm supposed to do the same bookkeeping that she does to be able to have the same answer.
Right?
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Gail.
Where do I want to start? Schedule A4, this long thing here.
Yep.
Under the contingency account,
Yep.
you said we raised 35,000,
Yep.
which we did.
Yep.
You said we have a balance forward of 10,655.
Yep, that's what you've approved, the carryover into the next year.
That's all well and good, but the audit report that ended June 30th, 2016, shows an overdraft of 19,000.
Which page are you on, Ben?
There's an A4.
Last page is the A4.
A4?
I mean, there it is, a contingency account, overdraft 19,000. But if I'm reading it wrong. Very bottom, reading that.
Man, you're on page A4. Where is
Page
it?
A4.
A will continue, the last A will continue, just before A8.
Okay.
Fred and I are going to work together tomorrow to try to get the rest of this finalized.
Okay, I got a couple others.
Okay, so keep them coming while he's looking. What else you got, Ben?
Well, yeah. Schedule A4 continues, the second of those third long pages. Under the ambulance account. Under public safety.
Yep, ambulance.
Ambulance account, it shows an appropriation of 475,000.
Yep.
The book, we raised 478,000, so it's off by 3,000. And it shows it carried forward.
Yeah, if you got a over expenditure. Yep, I see that.
Which, you know, those just don't add up.
No, I agree. But there may be a reason behind it, that there was something special that had to be carried forward. I don't remember if it was.
Well, I guess I'm saying the carry forward is wrong and the appropriation number itself is wrong.
Okay.
All right.
What are you doing tomorrow, Ben?
I was gonna say, I spent enough time checking this stuff. No. Yes, I'm back on the first page of A4. Under leisure services revenue.
Yep.
Community center fees. It says we took in 426.
Yep.
And then it's total 426. And it says other charges, 510. Which puts us over $83,000. According to the town report, we only were looking for revenues of 432. I don't know where you came up with the other 83,000 on that figure.
That's,
overdrafted.
No, this is,
no, that, because that was, there's another one after that, the,
It's the senior center.
yeah, the senior center.
That's about it, and then the community center is the last.
yeah, but those are all separate articles and stuff. I questioned the 510.
510 in total expenditures, you're questioning that?
That's not expenditures.
No,
We're on the revenue
charges,
page.
so that's the revenue, so that was the budgeted revenue.
But we didn't budget 510 in revenue, it was only 400.
Yeah, but isn't there two pieces to it?
There was a revolving account.
there was a
That's it.
revolving
That's a-
account.
That's a put together, Bill.
Yeah, they put the revolving.
And that's why we're
account.
80, remember Bobby kept saying that we were
This is
short?
funky.
We were told that didn't happen. I think you're right, but we were told that never happened, and I'm just pointing out it actually did
I
happen.
mean, I can break that out if you want, in this.
We knew
I had
that,
another-
I knew that it happened.
But when we talked about it here during the budget cycle, when we
So was
tried
this
to
like-
figure out
we
what
were gonna be
happened, we was told it didn't happen.
Oh dear God, I didn't have it.
Because
I guess I was always under the impression
Where did that money disappear to?
because Lisa said that line was over, inflated as far as revenue goes. She said it never should have been 500, and she gave that figure. She goes that they never made $500,000.
She said,
I think that one needs to be looked
So
at.
what is other charges on this thing, Fred?
That's what the budgeted revenue is.
Why does it say other charges instead of budget?
I've Bill's done it for years.
Oh, no, we're back to, that's the way we've always done it.
No, this is ours, we can change it, right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Financials. So you want budgeted revenue?
Well, yeah, that's what we budgeted, I don't want to say other charges because it makes it look like it's
So
other
it's
money.
budgeted revenue that should be there for the heading?
Budgeted.
Well, I understood what it meant.
But
Well, you're a step ahead of us, what are you doing
I-
tomorrow,
But
Fred?
it took a while.
I disagree with these guys. I knew that we were gonna be short that revenue.
Oh,
And
yeah,
that's,
we
Bobby, why I
knew we
never,
were
you and I
short.
wanted to go back to Marion's budget, because that was gone.
Well, we were told it didn't exist, but I think you're right, that's where it is, but that's not actually revenue, they just took 80,000 out of the budget and put it in a separate revolving account supposedly.
Oh, you're talking the thing from way back, you're talking.
No, this was Todd's, this was,
Yeah,
But didn't they say that they were
Is
going
this
to
Todd?
make $510,000?
and there
And
was
they
no
did
way,
not.
there was no way they were
In
gonna.
the
So
end,
that's why you've got
that-
the 83,000.
yeah, that
Correct.
83,000 has to come out of somewhere,
All right,
because it wasn't, you
We
didn't collect enough
we
money.
didn't get it, right,
right.
right.
It's just an accounting thing at this point. It's just,
Yeah, this just,
It's
it
just
shows how you
showing
did
the-
relative.
yeah.
to-
Well, okay, then,
we never had the 83,000.
Correct.
This thing.
well,
Not this 83,000, we never had.
This should be
I guess
here.
I would look at it that this page is a revenue page.
Yep.
And the 80,000 was an expenditure, and maybe it should have come out of the expenditure side of the account.
No, it's a shortfall in the budgeted revenue. So
And we knew
in the
that was
end,
coming.
that unexpended column is reducing surplus because it's negative 83,000.
When Lisa
It's
was
showing you a
here,
negative, it's showing you a negative because
We didn't make it.
they budgeted $510,000 revenue. That's what they said they were going to get.
And we never
But
got
they
it.
only got
No,
426.
So why aren't those underneath the appropriations like they are on the expenditures?
There was two revenue lines. They combined, we asked them to combine that, to take rid of
These
the.
other
If
charges
this was
really
written the
don't
way
know
it
what
was
they are.
appropriated back when the system
Revenue.
was see it.
Reading from left to right.
No, it wouldn't. I mean, that's the revenue, it's 452.
Yes.
But then look, there's another revenue. And it was that revolving one.
No, well, you'll have to find it, I haven't found it.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it,
No,
because that was the first article is to raise the revenues. which is a minor complaint I would like to make. We put together that article with 10 or 11 different towns, but in the audit, you have to go here, there, and here to add it all up. I mean, right here, the article says we're gonna raise $2.9 million in revenue.
Yep.
But on the audit, you have to look here, and everywhere to find it, to add all those up.
We can do whatever we want to our financials.
Yep.
I've heard that many times.
Well, I'm telling you that little piece is a little confusing.
What are you doing tomorrow then?
Ben, it says right in here, the last year's warrant, they estimated $521,000.
No, you're looking at the wrong one. Look at the warrant before that, for June 14, 2016. That's the one with the audit, those audits.
I'm looking at 2017.
Yeah, you've got the new book, he's got the old book.
Okay, all right,
2016, it says $432,000.
okay.
Really raising revenue. And somehow the 80,000 was a revolving account that wrapped into that.
Yeah.
I'll accept it, I don't understand it.
I mean, I could separate the two out, that's easy enough to do.
We just put them together. I don't think we're ever separating them out
Don't
again. I think we-
No, that was this year. This is the last year they're getting separated.
That was in the last one. Anything else, Ben?
But this thing, my bigger question on the rec is the appropriation and the carry forward and the contingent. And I have one more which I think it's more municipal than it is audit covering, if I can find it. On the front page, at the very bottom, Maine Yankee impact fee.
Yeah.
It says we have an overdraft of $38,000.
No.
Well, that's what it says.
Oh, yeah. $195,000 budget received. This thing is backwards.
You can change it if you want, your financials.
You're right.
Well, I mean, that is a figure that we put on the tax commitment, what we're gonna get from Maine Yankee. It should be to the penny, it shouldn't show an overdraft.
Which is the correct date, the 195 and 156.
I'm just pointing out that there's something terribly wrong.
I'm gonna bet you, because we've received more this year than we should have, so I wonder if it's carried over somewhere. I'll look.
Well, that's not how it works. Every
Will-
year we work out a figure, and we put that figure on the tax commitment. It should be money in, money out. It should be just like that RSU one, to zero up. And it shows we're 38,000 in the hole.
All right, we can look at it.
Okay.
Okay, that's another one to look at.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Ben will be in tomorrow about 9:30.
Yep.
Yeah, right. No, okay, but I mean, we were given this, and I looked at it, and there's just things that don't add up.
That's why we gave it to you,
Yeah, that's why-
so
that's why
that
you
you
do it
have
to look
another
at.
set of eyes.
Okay. This really isn't our job to find this stuff.
It depends
Well, I
on
mean,
what-
it isn't. We have to, but it isn't. Well, what was the answer on the RSU? Just things were put in the wrong places?
Yes, multiple places.
You mean
The RSU debt that we were asked about the last time, yes. Some of it was in an expense account, some of it was in a general ledger account, and some of it was supposed to have been prepaid, because it was actually overpaid. But those are the things that take time to go hunting and finding.
But we paid the 220.
We paid the 228 plus we paid a payment that wasn't due until July, and we paid at the end of June. So we moved that to prepaid, and then it will move into this year as a payment, so that this year's already paid off what we're supposed to pay.
Okay. So, then we're raising $228,000 this year, but we've already paid the bill?
Because it was overpaid last year, we moved it and put it into,
Right, you just moved it.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
How did it get over?
I think
Because it's due like the 2nd of July,
Okay, but
and they wanted to
what
make sure it got paid, so they paid at the end of June.
but what we We made one initial payment, and then went to town meeting and got the full year's payment for 4, and then for 4 more. So there may be an extra payment that
No,
you weren't aware of. I don't know.
I've gone through the whole thing, and basically, we have 4 of our leases or loans through the 1st that are due either the 2nd or the 4th of the month. So they're not a big deal, except that June, you need to not pay them until the 1st of July, or we need to pay them out of prepaid so they don't hit the expense line, and then move them out of prepaid into the expense line the next year. Or my other choice is I'm gonna ask the bank if we can move those dates out to like the 10th, so that we don't have that issue at the end of June.
I'm not glad you're handling
Where are you tomorrow, Ben?
that. Changes my number to now. It's in the book. My number is in the book, you can call anytime you like.
Okay, anything else, Ben?
I.
Look through it and come in tomorrow and we can go through it. That's fine.
Yeah, my number's in the book too. Give us a call right here in the office.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your patience.
Very good. Okay, are we ready to go on with our meeting? Okay.
Anybody watch this?
New business. Request for authorization from the town manager to execute the transfer of the Wiscasset Municipal Airport's expiring non-primary entitlement funds. And Mary?
So just like we did last year,
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you very much.
like we did last year, we are transferring $150,000 to the city of Waterville. Basically, we're making a loan of our entitlement funds because we have not reached the conclusion of the negotiations with the campgrounds. And so, if we don't do this, the money goes back to Washington and we never see it. If we do this, like we did last year to Rangeley, then when we get it back when we need it. So, they need it now and we haven't finished our project, which is negotiation of the funds. So this is the exact same language that we had from last year. I just need a motion and a vote.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? 5-0, thank you. Wiscasset Chamber of Commerce request for signage for a live of the Common Summer Concert Series.
Should be on the common, I think. You need a motion
No, so moved.
or? Second.
All those in favor? 5-0.
Thank you very much, I like that.
Thank you. 2017 Water Quality Monitoring Report.
So what you have in your packet is just an excerpt from the document that's about 4 inches thick, and it is in my office if you'd like to read it. But this is the requirement when you close the landfill, that you annually have to monitor the water quality at the municipal landfill that was closed. And so basically this is telling you that everything is fine, and just gave you the conclusion page. The results are generally consistent with previous years. Overall, the water quality of the site appears to be improving at the location. It should be noted that the trends of the change are modest, and it's just information for you. You do this every year, so I just wanted to bring it to your attention that we had done the water quality assessment and that it's not much different than the year before. There's no action needed on this item.
Does that mean it's drinkable or not?
I wouldn't.
You first.
Okay, monthly financials, year-to-date department expense report. Any questions? Any comments?
Does it look like if this will hold up, that there will be only 2 accounts that are there?
It does at this time, yes.
There's only 1 month left. Well, I think that's somewhat of a victory, actually. Looking at these audits from the year back, we had a lot more.
Yeah, I think the department is very good this year.
And not to justifies it, but as you mentioned, we contractual account is overdrafted by numbers much bigger than this
Yes.
in the past few years.
You did, good job. Okay, municipal quitclaim deed, Dion B. West, 12 Blanken Road. Blanken Ridge Road. Sorry.
I make a motion to approve.
I'll second. All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, scholarships, awarding of the monies for the, oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Sign ration?
Certified ratio.
Ratio, declaration and reimbursement application.
I know all of you have seen this a million times, but this is the form that we filed to get our homestead reimbursement money from the state. And as the assessors, you have to sign this. So last year we had 920 homestead exemptions.
Those are the people who are filing for homestead exemption. Out of all the properties, we've only got 920. Oh my goodness. I'm surprised.
I was gonna ask that same question, it seems like that would be higher.
I'm surprised more people do not apply for homestead exemption.
It has to be your principal residence and you have to own it for 12 months.
Oh, only 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised that, you know, when you look on the tax map database, I was looking at it the other day, I was looking at a piece of property, and I was surprised how many people that live in Wiscasset that don't apply for the homestead exemption. I'm just utterly amazed. I mean, $10,000.
I think you should just
10 or 15.
reapply.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I would not, it's up to the, people have to be responsible.
So you just need to make a motion and then vote to sign the application.
Well, can I just ask one more question before we do that? Is there any way that when we send out the tax bills, that we could put a little blurb in there about the homestead exemption to give information to the taxpayers? So maybe they would come forward? I think that would be a good deed on our part.
You can, I mean, if you add a page to the tax bill, it costs you more money, but you can do it.
What's it take, 2 years to get it? You don't get it immediately. You have to get your name first.
12 consecutive months.
You have to have it in by April 1st.
It has
Oh,
to be
maybe that's
for
where it was.
12 months. Unless you own property in another municipality in Maine and you can produce evidence that you owned it and it was your principal residence, then you can just transfer that.
Well, it's just a thought I had. And we don't have to discuss it tonight, but I mean, it was just a thought to get the information out there to the people. Okay.
Bad thought.
Pardon, Ben?
So it's not a bad thought.
No, I just think it's bad that, you know, that they're not participating in it.
So you wanted a motion that we pass the declaration and reimbursement application for
Yes.
2017,
18.
2018.
It says June 1st, 2018. So it's for last year's commitment.
Okay. That was a motion.
Oh, okay, I'll second it then. I'm sorry. I'm going to sleep sitting here. All those in favor?
We can't have that.
5-0. All right, thank you. Now we'll go with the scholarships. Awarding of the monies for the 2017 General John and Mrs. Jeanette French Scholarship and the 2017 Lawrence B. Haggett Memorial Scholarship.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, let's see. The pier vendor permit applications, we have Maine Kayak, to Potter Shed and Douglas Design. Catherine?
I'd make a motion that we approve all three at once. Will you do
I'll second
that?
that.
Okay, all those in favor? 5-0. Town managers report.
So I have a couple of items that I know you're aware of, but we did draft our letter for the corrective action plan that the FAA has required for the Tawanki campground easement. And from the couple meetings ago, you saw the letter where they requested that we discuss eminent domain, displacing, relocating the threshold of runway 7, and any other acceptable option acceptable to the FAA. We did have a meeting with the FAA and reviewed our report to them, and we will be sending this out to them tomorrow. The good news is that I had communication from the campground, and they have hired an appraiser, and we look forward to being able to resolve this amicably without having to take some of the action that the FAA would like us to take. So, and then also enclosed is the schedule of the FAA capital improvement meetings. We are scheduled for June 6th at 8:30, and that's where we have to give another update to them as to where we are in the process of enacting the safety measures that they're insisting upon. So, that's what I have for that. We have correspondence. We have a letter from Kim Dolce. It was in your box, but it's also in your packet. The one thing that I wanted to take the opportunity to point out, and I appreciate that you're here, Kim, is that I want to make it clear that the manager does not set the agenda. I do not decide what items go on the agenda and what items don't. That is strictly the purview of the chairman of the board. So my practice, when I receive any correspondence from anyone, the first thing I do is put copies of it in the board's individual personal mailboxes. Regardless of when the meeting is, I do that right away. And then I try to add it to my report, or if it's in time, I bring it to the chair. But the manager does not set the agenda. So I just wanted to make that clear, because I think there's some misunderstanding on that. We have a municipal quitclaim deed for Thomas and Mary Blatz. This is to clean up some sewer liens, and they had asked if we could move this along. It did not get in time to be before you, but the folks went to Jeff and asked him if there was any way that we could do this. So with the board's permission, I included that quitclaim deed.
What does undischarged sewer liens mean?
They have a sewer lien and they paid them, and for whatever reason, the lien was never discharged. I'm not sure how that happens, but.
Yeah, we had a bunch of them in years
Yeah,
past.
but that's what, in essence, the discharge was never filed with the registry. So you typically find it when a property sells, they do the title search on it, or if somebody's gonna refinance a mortgage.
It's just what it says it is.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I got a question on that. If you go to that back page of that quitclaim deed, it says in witness whereof, municipality of Wiscasset. Wiscasset is way the hell down east.
Yeah, where it says sign right here, it says, right there.
Wiscasset is down east.
Yeah, it sure is.
Way down east.
Jeffrey, I don't know what town you're in.
So do you want this back?
Just cross it off and write Wiscasset. This is their.
No, I'll let you do that.
Okay, yeah, we didn't draft this, they did, so.
Okay,
It's not
I just
our
see it, I was just reading it, I'm thinking,
Yeah, thank you.
way up for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
You take tomorrow off.
So, then I have a question that Cedar Leslie had asked to the board at the last meeting. And I'm sorry he's not here this evening, but he had asked some questions about the MDOT project and the change in the cost of the project. And I did some research, and I know most of you have this document, but when we signed the letter of intent in October of 2016, there's specific language in there that says, other than payment for additional work that the municipality chooses to include in the project, of which we did not include any. We had some conversations about bathrooms and things, but we did not include anything. All design and construction costs will be paid by the department. So I found that in writing to address those concerns, and I'll make sure that Seaver has that information for his files.
Kim?
I got the impression when he asked that, what went through my head was if there's a cost overrun to that extent, would they say, well, we're not going to do that because now we don't have the money? I think that was the sense of where he was going with this.
That was.
Because the parking lot on Water Street isn't included in what went out in the contract. So if less than the full project is $6.8 something million, I think his concern was, are they going to take something else off to stay within budget?
And that would be a question that would be directed to MDOT. We only know what they bid the project for, and you saw the same documents that we saw.
Right.
And we have the map of what their project is. But to my knowledge, we've received no information that any part of the project is changing.
And could I address that? I know everybody wants to go home, but I went onto their website the other day because I thought, well, okay, we're almost there. They're getting ready to break ground. And there is nothing new on their website about the Wiscasset project. The most recent things came from May 8th of last year. And you would think that there would be something.
Well, I think that's a situation, not to interrupt you, but I think that's a situation you yourself would have to contact MDOT and find out why they're not updating their website.
So you don't feel as a town we kind of need to know the answers to those sorts of questions? No, I'm not asking you to do it.
I was going to say, I'm busy enough.
I'm just saying that they are.
I would think they would.
They're not in communication with me, they're in communication with the town. So I'm surprised at the lack of communication.
Whatever communications, I can only say that whatever communications we get from MDOT or anything, we make sure the public is aware, we put it on our website. And as soon as we hear anything, we will take care of it, we will do it. But as far as I know, we have not heard anything from MDOT at this point.
And my hope is that they did confirm the meeting on the 21st, that the public liaison person was going to be present at that meeting and have information. Perhaps they're waiting till then. I don't know. I can say that whenever I call Ernie or talk to Bill Pulver and ask a question, they're always very forthright with whatever I ask them for. I was the one that asked for the big plan for us to have here because we didn't have one, and I got a lot of questions about what is the plan and where's it going to be, and so they produced that right away. So, I mean, if they're, I certainly am happy to make a call to ask them, you know, when they think they're going to update the website. If that's not a problem, I'm happy to do that.
Where are we with the CEI building? Is that going to be a parking lot, or is it?
That is not part of the project right now.
I was afraid of that.
What we can discuss, you know, at another time is, do we want to send a letter to MDOT to ask them if we could have discussions to bring that back in to the project? I don't know how receptive they'd be to that, but we certainly could do that. But at this time, it is not a part of the project, and from what I understand, Pike Industries is going to use that as their building for their offices and their staging. So at this time, it's not included at all. But I'm pleased to draft a letter if the board is interested in having that conversation with them. You don't have to decide tonight, you can think about it. but I'm happy to do that. But at this time, it's not in the project.
I think it's a must. I mean, I can't quite see how we can survive without it being in the parking lot.
I agree with you. I mean, like I've said before, maybe I look at different than most people. I think that's a possibility, and I think a letter from the board would go a long ways. Maybe even to help mend fences if we could possibly, if that's the way you want to put it. And request that they do consider putting that project back on, because we do need that parking. And if they're going to, they're definitely going to eliminate, Main Street. That leaves us only Railroad Avenue and a few small parking lots. And so we really do need that parking lot. And I encourage the board to really consider doing that, putting it out there to the department.
Am I okay, send that out?
Oh, I agree.
I think we need to do it. Because I know Mr. Deering in his lawsuit, he had done some, I read it, when he presented to the court, requesting that they put, Deering himself put the Haggett building into his brief before the judge to request that she consider and not consider making it into a parking lot. So I think the Deering family themselves realize that we do need that parking. But that's up to the judge as far as that goes. And I know they had closing arguments today.
They did. And in the MDOT response, they did say that they wanted to be in discussion with the town to possibly looking for a way forward to making that a parking lot.
So I think let's do it.
More reason for a letter.
Definitely. I think you need to draft a letter and let's get it up there to the MDOT.
Okay.
That we would like to see that. Yes, Jason?
So if they don't decide to do it, the building will sit there empty, the parking lot won't be able to be used, right? Currently, you can't park there. Right, so it's conceivable they would be, for lack of a better word, spiteful enough to not let us use that, even have blank space, right?
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with spite, Jason, it has to do with
I said for lack of a
liability. No, I
better-
mean, but really.
But I mean, they
it has
can
to
move
do
those
with
concrete
liability.
barriers,
Right.
and the building can sit there, and people can still park there, right? I mean,
Well, it belongs to MDOT, basically to do what they choose. And maybe that is what they want to hear from the town. Maybe they want to hear from us.
But that parking lot, Jason, is in disrepair. It has been for years
Oh,
and years
yeah,
and
I
years.
mean,
If you were to go in there and get hurt at this point, you know exactly what I'm saying.
right, I guess so, but just.
It isn't likely, but that's.
Yes, Jim?
But on the same token, I mean, that's great. I think the town definitely does need to reach out. But as Bob mentioned earlier, the town should not surrender a single side street parking space unless MDOT produces the equivalent in that parking lot or elsewhere, because they're literally going to be having our existing parking. And when they did their parking study, none of the second and third floor occupancies were ever factored into that study, so it was a flawed parking study to begin with. So there was not enough parking factored into the plan to begin with. So we've got to be very careful. The town has the right to stop them from taking any parking. We cannot give up the parking until there's quid pro quo. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Steve?
To answer his question, nor does the town have an obligation to provide parking to people who live in those second and third floor apartments. They do not have that, we do not owe them a place to park. It's the people who own the buildings, and it's written in the ordinance. So we don't owe anybody in second and third floor apartment buildings a place to park. The town doesn't own that.
And to maybe answer Bob's question, are we talking about at the ends of each road, like Middle Street and Water Street, taking away the parking? Is that what you were?
Sorry, I'm in trouble.
No, don't bother.
At that PAC meeting, I got the impression that we was talking about a lot of parking on the side streets. Or a little parking, doesn't matter.
Sure, no, it's irrelevant.
And I just don't think that we need to give up any parking
If it's the parking that you're talking about, we studied it, we had this guy come down and do this, and there's gonna be cars at those intersections, potentially, so that if someone was parked there, that they wouldn't be able to get out. That's why they removed the parking.
Frankly, I would say that would be their problem.
Yeah, but that's why
I can't
we removed it, but that's, no, I'm not saying that it was right or wrong, but there's like two up at Middle Street, 2 down on Water Street, and it was because of the cars are gonna be stacked up there, and they can't get out.
But the only difference is traffic lights.
No, there's gonna be traffic lights, yeah?
That's what I mean, but other than that, entrance and leaving the roads is the same as it's been for 50 years.
No, it's not as far as driving, it's as far as stop traffic there. So there's gonna be 5 or 6 cars potentially stacked up all the time. And if someone's parked there, they can't get out.
Well, when the traffic is backed up, cars go around and stack right up on Water Street anyway.
Well, that's what I'm saying, people stop there.
But that was the study that we looked at as a pack, was that they weren't going to be able to be used, because if you got in there, you weren't getting out.
But the Public Safety Committee is bringing that before the
Correct.
PAC.
No, I was just adding
And
that.
to the selectmen at that point in time, that
Yep.
a decision can be made.
Nope, and I don't think that it was ever like concrete in
I don't think any
stone.
of this is concrete in stone yet.
Right.
And I don't think MDOT has made a decision one way.
Well, I
Because
thought
even
they were
Ernie
more-
that night said it was up to the town.
It is our decision.
It's our decision. Until we get the information, we can't make that decision. Yes, Kim?
I very much appreciate what you're saying, because I do see that once there are lights and you're forcing more
Correct.
traffic onto the side streets, there could be issues.
Right.
But, and I also appreciate that it's difficult that our parking spaces are like right up to the corner.
Right.
Which is problematic, but to remove 7 and 8 spaces in that first block, we're losing so much side street parking. And a study that MDOT commissioned looked just at the first floor businesses and said our town needs 92 spaces within a reasonable walking distance. We won't have that. Even with Haggett's, if they take our side street parking, we won't have that. Until you start counting that distant lot up on
And all I'm telling you, Kim, is that, like I said, I've been off the pack for a while. They were just supposed to be like 2 in front of Sarah's, 2 up on Middle Street, 2, you know what I mean? It was minimal.
Right, it's a lot more now.
Yep.
This there is right there, 5 parking spots, that's a heck of a lot.
It was
Like
supposed
I
to
said,
be.
let's not
sorry.
discuss it tonight
Sorry.
because,
Well, no, but you said it was, I mean, it is out there in concrete, I mean, we've had this for years.
well, I think we need to let them, the public safety bring it to the PAC bring it to us, and as a board, then we can discuss it, we can say yes, we can say no, we can look at it. we can
I'm
make
fine with
changes.
that, as long as nothing is removed until this board, whoever may be setting here, makes the decision.
Well, Ernie Martin said on Monday night at the PAC meeting that it comes to the board. The parking decisions are up to the board.
Yep.
Fine.
And he made that very plain.
No, and this was just their recommendation. Probably
They
Kim
can
was at the
recommend
same
it, but
meeting.
it's our decision.
Yep.
Okay, anything else?
Well, yes.
Oh, please.
Continue.
Girls.
So I need your help with something. I have been unable to find some historical information. And I appreciate that Mrs. Bryan is here tonight. But she brought a document into Kathy. We're not sure why Kathy became the code enforcement officer, but brought it to Kathy about the ordinance that you, and you meaning the town, not you folks individually, adopted December of 2011 was the fireworks ordinance. And she's highlighted 3 things. I copied it just like she provided it to us. And it was requesting copies of 3 things. The conditional use permit from the planning board, I assume the code officer can provide that to her if they have one. The business license from the town clerk, I do have that, and you remember you issue those once every 3 years. So he was issued one in 15, he doesn't have another one due until 19, so I do have that license. But then the last thing that she requested was a copy of the annual license from the Board of Selectmen. Now, I can't find anywhere in the records where the board issued an annual license from the Board of Selectmen. So I'm looking for your guidance. Do you know if you've issued one? I've looked everywhere that I can look. It says in the ordinance, an annual license from the Board of Selectmen, the application for the annual license shall be on a form provided by the town and required payment of the application fee in an amount set by the selectmen. Well, I know the fee's not on the fee schedule, so my assumption is you didn't set one. And I'm thinking that maybe this is something that fell through the cracks. But I was hoping that some of you might have some institutional knowledge
And this
about this.
is for personal fireworks?
No, this is for the retail sales of fireworks. And so Mrs. Bryan had asked for this and I'm unable to produce it. So I'm thinking the town has never issued one.
The only retail sales we have is at
Right.
Big Al.
Right. But I can't find
And it's
it.
been open since I've been on the board, and I've never signed anything.
Okay, all right. So it seems like that this is one of those things that kind of fell through the cracks, similar to what we corrected not too long ago with historic preservation when we found in the ordinance it said there had to be a fee and this and that. So what I will do is I will draft the form as it talks about in the ordinance and then bring it back to you to set the fee and to move this forward. But I just wanted to confirm that the board and the town have never issued it.
Nope.
I mean, there's no violation, because if we didn't do it, it's on, we didn't do it, so.
No, as a matter of fact, that business never came before us.
Okay.
It went to the planning board,
Yeah.
and then it
And he
never.
got his business license.
That's what I'm saying,
And that-
but it never had anything to do with us.
Okay. All right, so Mrs. Bryant, you have your answer. The town has never required that permit, so, but we certainly can correct that, so thank you for that.
What about the conditional use permit from the planning board? I believe he never received that either.
That would go through the code enforcement officer, so I'm only bringing this as it pertains to the Board of Selectmen. So that would be something that you would need to see Stan for, because he would have the planning board records. So-
I remember when he first put fireworks in there, and there was no planning board approval for the fireworks.
I can't speak to that. Like I say, I only was bringing forward what needed to come to the selectmen. But Stan will be back next week and we can certainly check with him, but I can't speak to that. Okay, well, thank you for your help.
Just to review then, you're gonna come up with a fee schedule?
I'll make a recommendation to you, we'll come to you with your approval. I'll try to find out what other towns are charging, because I don't know.
And then after we do that, we will schedule a public hearing.
We'll follow the ordinance. Okay.
Better late than never.
Okay. And then the last thing I have is the town clock. Don Jones has emailed Jeff Slack and Judy Colby regarding the town clock. We are aware that the town clock is not in sync. We have contacted the Balzer clock folks to come and fix it. We are on their work list. We just don't know quite when they can come and do it. Since the February repairs that Jason and his son did, thank you again, Steve Christensen and Joe Cahoon have set the time, and it's pretty close to right. I checked it the other day. But just so that you know, if you get any more questions about the clock, I always invite Don to come under public comment and ask his question, but we did notify the clock company, so I hope that's helpful.
Jason, thanks again.
Yeah, sure.
That's all I have.
You're welcome.
Other than, well, I want to make sure that you all know that we have a Wiscasset officer graduating from the Maine Criminal Justice Academy this Friday at 10 o'clock. We received an invitation to attend. The chief will be attending. So when you see Officer Fisher, be sure and congratulate him. It's a lot of hard work and that accomplishment. So
Okay, do we have any other board business, members of the board?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
If we could get some help with the newspapers. We would like to give out the Boston Post cane again, but we're trying to determine exactly who the oldest resident is. And if you could, if there's anybody out there who knows of anybody who's 95 years or older who would be interested in holding the cane, because not everybody wants it, to let us know. We're narrowing it down, but we want
We will
to be as sure as
definitely
possible. If you could help, that would be great.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Thank you.